It's Tuesday, April 16th, 2024. I'm in Tacoma. I'm a deaf man named Mac. There's a number of reasons why I want to make this tape. I have a number of notes before I go through the trouble of transferring them from my iPhone and getting them printed and reading them. I want to try to do the material off the cuff. Now, the proximate purpose of this video is to explain who I think poisoned me. I'm being checked out early. I'm 63 years old. The people responsible know what I can accomplish in 20 years. They respect the end of life. There should be a law against sabotaging fulfillment of a person's life. But I also want to talk about Gaza so that you see this in context. Views about what is going on there are still forming. And of course, still forming views need time to reconcile. I don't know if you respect me enough to think that it matters. I can explain why they do. But when it comes to Gaza, one of the unresolved questions for me as a person taken by surprise by the whole thing, who had mourned the lack of representation for the Arabs for years of war in Syria, Afghanistan, and Iraq. I was in shock, staring into space about it, trying to find time to work on the other things, the things that got me poisoned. Anybody who knows what the American-Israeli Political Action Committee has been up to in Congress realizes that inside jobs carry a lot of power across the board in the world. So the question of whether or not Gaza could have been an inside job remains unanswered. There were, largely unaddressed, there were, to my consternation, a few fellas up and running on TikTok who trivialized the death of supposedly their own people and glorified their martyrdom. I don't believe that the people who were behind the uprising that led to this were unaware of what Netanyahu would do, whom he would do it, and the doctrine of massive retaliation, which has been around for a long time in Israeli lore. I first heard of it as a teen in the 70s. Israeli propaganda would have you believe, despite the fact that Putin has expressed his lack of concern for things like lesbianism, that the Arab world is burning people at the stake for alternative lifestyles. That's not true in Lebanon, you know, and educated people fall prey to tricks. And America has an intelligence mafia, which is expert at predicting what people will respond to. It's feedback loops that observe you responding to their stimuli through cyber detection on iPhones, for example. who can then steer you towards a quote unquote mentor in artificial intelligence or whatever to get your responses in line with the military industrial complex profile that they desire you to be in, whether it's to object you or subject you or to train you or to encourage you or to choose you to cultivate. All of that is subject to whim. The high command old power system are notoriously senile laughers who just mock everything, who just enjoy throwing lightning bolts. Ogres up on a hill. I don't want to rehearse tired tropes. We do have to understand and accept that we chose to stand by and be helpless while children were slaughtered on our watch. When you look at me, the people who poisoned me were puerile Reagan heads who you're supposed to have a pity party for. I mean, the Kennedys were killed, King was killed. These were the survivors of whatever was going on in the 50s and 60s. We're supposed to pity them. We're supposed to listen to their tall tales of Jimmy Crary, the Dracula serial killer, when they were the ones brainwashing and hiring attack prostitutes to moralize me. They were paying for and sponsoring the abortions to manufacture a walrus so they could, which is what they called me in the script, so that they could evoke John Lennon for doing terribly dirty things like cosmetic damage, threats to poisoning me in the mouth, giving me Parkinson's, the slipper man martial law of Penis Gabriel. And they know that I've been in Sin East magazine, I'm a published poet, that I have communication skills. They figure deterrence and self-destruction through induced dementia, which Parkinson's leads to, will be helpful for them to fob off as some sort of karma code to young sophomores who don't realize the centuries of brainwashing and techniques that went into the medieval tabula rasa that they used to hide John Lennon behind a tampon in a script as a myth of abortion, coulda, to promote the Vietnam War. They're very womanly and vain people around Clint Eastwood, like Clint Eastwood. They're very womanly and vain. And they have penis envy, and it takes this complex, compound process for them to express their penis envy as denunciation of the libertine. Go do what my grandma didn't let me so I can point my finger at you. It's a sniveler's process. It never should have been validated. But they're purposefully tragic in Gaza. Rosa, who announced hostilities for this gang, scribbled me a note, "I have discovered to cry." And these Gallaudet noted how strange it was that during COVID there was a popularity of weeping cafes in Japan. The Shinto nature religion that the Croquet Ragustakarana cultivates as part of her myth was set to go with John Lennon being hidden, the hidden walrus. So this leads somewhere for me. I took corrections in Pittsburgh with Jackie Delaplane, and she was receptive to discussion about the way that Hollywood depicts corrections. Now, Robert Redford is a whole particular individual who had a corrections film that it's very revealing semiotically. He interrogates a prisoner in front of the people they're accusing and ends up dead. I mean, there's a lot about Redford that needs to be questioned, but he's part of the elect on high, throwing their lightning bolts and saying, surely you don't think we did anything wrong. Lee Marvin was encrypted his entire celebrity career with intonations of the plot on JFK. I'll say that anywhere. Of course, that's why they're getting rid of me. But corrections has other aspects that don't get put together very often. Now, you could talk about it, the way that there's been a divorce between media and entertainment, education and media. That has led to a broken home in the United States of America. WQED, where a lot of fiasco mongering, where Eastwood was brought in by Mr. Rogers. Jimmy Carrere was at Mr. Rogers' church all through growing up. Mr. Rogers knew me quite well, in fact, from the time I was very little. Well, the Axis Hollywood that I've studied is on other tapes. But once you get the idea of what Hollywood is, its role in the military-industrial complex is crystal clear. They have the same problem in Russia with Chernuka cinema, it's called. But the mention of Hollywood's involvement in dissent and martyrdom is a little less clear and conscientious objection. But what isn't clear at all is its role with corrections. Hollywood and corrections is an understudied field. Now, Carnegie Mellon University Drama School did, of course, play underground detective for the Pittsburgh police and help train operations in underground investigation, which is why they so hate me, because I went underground to detect their intelligence operations during the AIDS attack and proved that's what it was. So the lobby of martyrdom was using Lenin as a birdie, fly birdie, and it's all the way back in the birth of Japan film that ends with a Disney bird flying off into the sunset. Story of the bird, they called it. They planned it for a long time. That's the reason why we know Lenin was Houdini, because of how far back the semiotics go. They didn't just leave it to chance that he was going to go out that night. He was in on it. That's why we know that, which is one of the reasons they're getting rid of me. It's something of an achievement getting to the bottom of that. And I do thank Camilla Believer, whatever her intentions may have been. She helped me get to the bottom of that by opening the door to what was happening with Uspensky and Karki. Well, corrections in Hollywood have a lot of connotations. And when you look at the pornographic genocide situation that's developed, in light of the fact that there are rumors that Russian authorities and Iranians in theology agree with Hitler Reagan that it's Satanism. And they spread the swimsuit for Andrea Swimmer's suit on Jimmy Cruise neurological implant, which recorded conversations from the environment when he was hostage, that Jaime Carmenel is going to jump down home PB with Brian Mills and say, "What's that mean to the Russians?" And they're going to say the vodka is cold, and the storyline translates into Celeron has a book that's mine. I mean, it's mind-numbing heapery from the spine-tingling neon prophets of prog rock who are going to make it worth the loss to recognize Palestine. I'm not personally of the opinion that Palestine couldn't have been recognized by ordinary means. I had an encounter with Pieter Gabriel back in the Rusty days. Well, my father was a Peace Corps leader in Liberia. Whatever you may think of the Peace Corps and the white man, that's a fact. And he went to Ecuador and he loved helping the poor. That's a fact. And he influenced me. Well, Fripp and Gabriel had wanted to exterminate the existence of me, the legitimacy that my father cultivated with his textbooks about public school, his driving of a school bus, enraged the psyche of the royalty, who are unelected, immune powers full of wealth. And they don't like legitimacy like that. They're like, get the legitimacy out of here. So Ken Crimson wanted me completely squelched out. So when I surfaced, writing a very persuasive editorial in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette demanding divestment, they had to attribute it to Peter Gabriel's influence from his song Biko. Now, Biko may have had a role in helping abolish apartheid, which is my point. He never wrote a song about the Palestinians. He was too busy advocating for Netanyahu with albums like that. And he believed, he's firing his attack prostitutes. I said sarcastically, Mark, all the girls slept with me because you were writing to me. And he evidently believed he could say that. There were a couple of really good-looking girls who didn't care anything at all for them. Came on to me. I was a pretty little boy, an angel. And they were using me. So you don't want to feed into the idea that Biko brought was Joshua at the walls of Jericho or whatever the story is. The walls came tumbling down. It's the name of a book by, I think, Ralph Abernathy. The civil rights movement brought the walls down, not Gurdjieff. They were calling, King Crimson was calling their albums things like March for No Reason. They were quite fortunate that I liked them as much as I do. I don't like King Crimson's presumption that they're like the Holy Spirit, in their music, all bottled by celestials. But there is truth to the fact that people hammered South Africa for the indecency. And South Africa, to their eternal credit, talked to the ICJ, the International Court of Justice. Anybody who saw it still remembers their tears. The waterfall. The waterfall.